Greetings, my sweetest dears, my beloved friends. Thank you so much for joining me. We are in week 4 of thothtober taste. I'm so excited. I really love this week so much. In this video, as usual, I'll be sharing with you the 2 activities. Well, not as usual sharing the 2 activities, but I'll be sharing the 2 activities as well as my experiencing doing them myself. And all of the information is in the description, so you can find the PDF there and the Discord and the playlist if you need to do any catching up. But yeah, let's just get into it. I'm so excited to share with you. I seriously love this week. I know I say that about every activity, but yeah. Okay, so before we get into the activities, let me just talk a little bit about taste itself and kind of the approach that I took for these activities this week. So I kind of went with the 5 basic tastes that we kind of, how we describe the things that we taste with our tongue, with our taste buds. So we have sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and umami or savory. There's different ways of calling it. I personally like umami, but it also goes by savory, so yeah, that's that. But so I kind of looked at not only the kind of like physical benefits of these different tastes, but also the kind of like metaphoric ways that we look at it. You know how we do that throughout thothtober. Very much a metaphorical, figurative look at the senses and using the Thoth Tarot to help us explore that and get to know the deck and just have this fun way of exploring. So anyway, yeah, for sweet, yeah, we're looking at kind of the ways that we view this word as being like joyful, lovely, very nice, very kind, very loving, all the good things in life. And for salty, this one was really interesting because it kind of like overlaps with sour a little bit as far as like metaphorically how we look at salty, at least from my perspective. But like physically speaking, salt is really helpful for like regulating like fluid retention and the energy for our cells in our body and stuff like that. So like we don't want too much or too little salt, so there's very much like an idea of like balance there. So that's kind of the perspective that I went with it for that. For sour, we kind of know what it's like to have like a sour kind of negative view. That's kind of how we tend to look at sour, but also it's super helpful, just like bitter, for helping us detect like poisonous things, like things we shouldn't be eating, things that have gone bad, stuff like that. So each one of these tastes has like a really cool purpose, but there's also like ways that we kind of use it in our everyday language that doesn't necessarily equate with them, but has a nice little parallel. So yeah, like I said, with bitter, we also have that poisonous bend on it, but then we also have like things that are bitter that are not like poisonous for us, like coffee and things like that. So it's really interesting to look at the purposes behind our tastes, but also the ways that we use it physically as well. Well, the ways that it benefits us and that we enjoy it physically, like coffee is one of those things. And then we have umami, which we all know is kind of like that savory, like that. It has like a very depth, complexity to it. I find it to kind of be one of the most interesting for me personally, but yeah, I really like umami, but it's not like my favorite. I always said that I had like a kind of sweet tooth, but I don't know if that's necessarily the case anymore. I wouldn't say, I wouldn't know where I really fall on these, but that's not necessarily, that's neither here nor there as far as the activities go. But yeah, and then there's taste in general, where it's like obviously the physical sense of taste, but then there's kind of like your taste in things, a taste for something that you like, or a bad taste in your mouth for something that you don't like. But taste as also being just like your something that we kind of look at as like being like a refined palate and things like that. So it's really interesting to look at these in a multitude of ways. So that's kind of the approach that I took with it. So yeah, with that being said, let's just get into the first activity after I take a sip of tea. I'm calling this first activity a culinary tour through the Thoth Tarot. So I'm imagining we're with our guide and we're kind of like sitting down for a little meal, not even in a amuse-bouche. I don't know why that's what I'm thinking, because it's not like an in-depth meal, but we're kind of getting a taste of things. They're giving us a few things to try and sample through the Thoth. They're just giving us a little bit of an experience, a culinary experience, and I kind of like that. So just imagine your guide is with you through this, and you guys are experiencing this together, and they're showing you all these things. So we're going through the 5 tastes through this activity. And so for each one, there's pretty much 2 little prompts, and this is the kind of activity you only do once. It's going to be subjective. Everybody's going to get different cards, but I think it's super, super fun. So for example, well, let's just start. Sweet, we are going to shuffle and pull a card for the sweetest card in the deck. And then we're going to shuffle and pull another card for this card is not often seen as sweet, but it is. So for each one, you're just going to pull a card from the deck, and it's going to be really fun to just see what comes up. I kind of think of it as successful if it makes you laugh, if it makes you think. And is that not the whole thothtober experience? Yes, so those are the 2 prompts for sweet. So then next we move on to salty. First is this card has the power to balance strong energies and emotions. So like we talked about with saltiness and kind of how it regulates the water in the body and things like that. And then the second prompt is this is the epitome of equilibrium. And moving on to sour. The first prompt is this is the card that corrects a sour attitude. That was really fun. And then the second one is this card has a sour attitude. So yeah, this should be a really fun thing. And like I said, everyone's going to get different cards. So it's not about being like an ultimately like objectively correct answer, but really just getting to taste and see and experience the thoth in this way, and just really build a language also for yourself, which is really fun, and get you thinking about the different ways that you can see the card or taste the card. And next we move on to bitter. We have this is the most bitter card in the deck. And then secondly, we have this card is not often seen as toxic, but it can be. And then we have umami / savory. This card has a depth that I don't dig into enough. And then secondly, we have this is the most satisfying, most delicious card in the deck. I love that. And then we have taste. So we're just going to do one initial prompt for taste, which is this is the epitome of taste and refinement. So pull a card for that as well. Now that you have all these cards, you're going to have 11 cards here. You're going to want to keep those off to the side. Put the deck away. Now we just have these 11 cards. You know I love a good subsection of the deck. But then we're going to shuffle these cards that we've just received. You know, you're going to write them down on the PDF. It's all there. Opportunities for you to write, and you can kind of expand on these as you wish and kind of write about them. You don't have to. You can write a couple of notes. It's really not meant to be like a super in-depth thing. Like I said, the experience I'm imagining is that you're kind of just getting a little taste testing with your guide, a little amuse-bouche session, appetizer session, nothing major. But if you'd like to, you can ask your guide to take it a little deeper, aka you can journal about these answers and you can kind of explore the ones that are most interesting to you. But yes, that being said, you're going to shuffle those cards, and then you're going to have 2 last prompts. The first one is this card represents the predominant taste in my life. So it's going to align with one of the prompts. So one of the prompts of the 5 categories, and then you'll have a second prompt, which is this card represents a taste I need at this time. And so what we're going to have here is not only the sub prompts within each taste. Like for example, if I got the predominant taste in my life is the most bitter card in the deck. For example, like let's say I got the most bitter card in the deck was the Knight of Wands. So, for example, this would be the predominant taste in my life is bitterness. So that would be interesting. But let's say the the card that represents a taste that I need in my life was like the sour card. And this was like, this card has a sour attitude, and it's the Ace of Wands. So you can look at this. It's super interesting to just look at what you have and what you need, which somehow it's both fire, but they're taking on different energies. And you can kind of journal about this. You can look at it as the subsection. But what we're going to do with these cards is really important because, you don't have to do anything with it, but it's going to lead into our next activity. So that's activity 1. You're going to leave this activity with, the predominant taste is bitter. and the taste I need is sour, for example. Um, so moving on to the second activity. So this one is called Transforming Flavors. I really liked this because I wanted to really think about how, I was thinking obviously a lot about cooking and, just the whole culinary experience and how there's ways to transform flavors as you're cooking and how they also transform on the tongue while you're eating. So I wanted to use that as an idea around like transformation of the self and changes and transitions within. So based on these two cards that you receive from the last activity, you're going to choose one of the readings that I've listed that correspond to different ways of transforming flavors. And it'll serve as pretty much a personalized reading for where you can create change and transformation in your life. So there's a couple of ways that you can determine which reading works best for you. So there are technically, what are we looking at? 4 categories and 5 readings overall. And pretty much what you can do is you can go through and read them and just determine which one feels right for kind of like the contextual situation that you're in the time period that we're experiencing thothtober right now. So late October 2024, as we've done from the beginning and as we continue to do, everything is contextualized to the time period that we're experiencing this. So with everything that you're experiencing right now, kind of whatever topic that you feel like you want to explore in kind of this way of looking at transformation and transition and change, you can choose it that way. What you can also do, I've put tips on the side, you can also look at it with the predominant taste that you have and need at this time. This is kind of the crux of it. You don't have to necessarily use this, but this is kind of the way that I've designed it to be useful. So each reading kind of corresponds to a combination of cards that you might have gotten. Let's say, for example, what we just talked about was that if you have bitter and you need sour, for example, you might want to go to the palate cleansing experience. So it's generally, if you have umami or salty and need sour, this reading could be for you. In this case, you are focusing on needing sour. And so you might want to go to the palate cleansing one, which is about shifting a jarring experience. So that one might be helpful for you. But you can also go, if it feels more representative of your situation or you like the reading a little bit better, you can go to the herbs and spices category, which is about bridging the gaps. And so how herbs and spices bridge the flavors and kind of create connections and seamless transitions between them. And this reading works for any combination that you might have, any taste you have, any taste you need. So you might want to go to that one if it feels more relevant, if you're looking at the prompts there. The important thing to note is that there's no right or wrong answer for the reading that you choose. It's just meant to be a little bit of a game, and you kind of choose the one that works best for you. I wanted to provide a couple of options instead of just having like one reading that works for everybody. I wanted to make it a little bit more fun, a little bit more interesting. So yeah, there's no wrong or right. It's just kind of there for you to play around with and see which one works best for you. But I'll quickly just go over them so that you can kind of understand what we're working with. So the first category is combining complements. So it's kind of looking at how different flavors might work together. So in the encouraging amplification, we're looking at 2 different things coming together. So in this one, we're talking about wisdom and joy. So the wisdom that you've acquired from your experiences, how you express joy, and then how you can combine them to amplify one another, and the rich aroma of the pairing. Another aspect of taste is aroma. Flavors come from not only just the tastes, but the sense that we are taking in as we eat as well. So that's a really beautiful aspect of that one. And then we have understanding complexity. So not just combining and amplifying, but having this sort of contrasting complexity happening. Like one thing that came to mind for this one was like dark chocolate. And so we're looking at a bitter part of life and a sweet part of life, and seeing how the bitter taste can be tempered by sweetness and how we can honor the complexity of that. Next, we're moving into palate cleansing. So to shift a sort of jarring experience, we'll sometimes, when we have an intense, flavorful experience, we want to get a little palate cleanser in there to clear out and prepare for what's coming. So for this one, we want to look at describing the rich intensity. So you're going to pull a card for the intensity of the experience, and then how can you cut through the intensity. So sometimes we'll use like citrus, like something sour, to sort of cut through a salty or umami experience. And then you have transitioning from heaviness to lightness. That's also what a palate cleanser can do. Like, I don't know, if you had like a cracker or sorbet, I've heard is very common for a palate cleanser, that kind of thing. And in that vein, we have what cool refreshment would support me. So yeah, something like a sorbet or a cold drink or something like that. We're looking at not only the taste, but the temperature and things like, so many layers to it. So exciting. And then lastly, for the palate cleansing, is what is this experience preparing me to taste next? So as you're sort of cutting through, moving away from that jarring or intense experience, if that's something that you're going through right now, what is it preparing you to taste next? So I hope you can kind of see the metaphors that are happening here, but also the enjoyful play of, enjoyful is not a word, but the joyful play of taste involved as well. And the last two, so we have fermenting and aging. So for multifaceted development, one way that we shift flavors and transform flavors in food is fermenting and aging. So these are really cool things that I personally love. As you know, I always talk about my fermented teas and shit. So, but this is like multifaceted development. If you have something that you're really looking at, that you want to really transform and have it over a long period of time and have this sort of like chemical reaction that, is very kind of unexpected and produces a really rich complexity. It's a kind of a deeper, thicker reading as well. So we have the base material to develop is the first prompt, and then what tension is naturally added or can I introduce, and how can I savor the process of development? So we're kind of looking at bitterness or umami that comes forward potentially, and subtle layers of sweetness. So we're looking at what dynamic transformations can I expect to occur? What subtle changes will I see? These are things that happen in the fermenting and or aging process. And then we have, at what stage will it be most sour? So we sometimes, like I'm thinking about cheese as well. Sometimes you want that taste, but sometimes you don't. And so it's like, what stage do you want to kind of pull something out of fermentation or pull it out of aging? It's all these stages have different, you have preferences for when you want to enjoy that thing, when it's a flavor that you like or a flavor that you don't like. But so yeah, at what stage will it be most sour? You can interpret that as you see fit. Generally here we're looking at sour as in not right, not ready. And what stage will it be most intriguing? What stage will it be kind of sweet maybe? Will it be will we get that umami flavor? Who knows? And then lastly, when is it ready to nourish and satisfy? And that's when it's like complete, has the full bouquet of complexities and nuances and whatever this thing is that you are working through that has a sort of longer life of aging and fermentation. When is it ready to be eaten and enjoyed? When is it reached its perfection point, if that makes sense, to enjoy that thing? And lastly, we have, like I said, the herbs and spices, bridging the gaps reading. And so this one is going to be looking at where you're starting and where you're going. So how we're bridging that in between, from like maybe from sweet to savory, kind of how do we get there? But this one works for any combination. So I'm starting here, and so you pull a card for where you're starting, and you pull a card for where you're heading. So in this situation, you're looking at what transition you're really looking to make from now to then, and then what do I need to add to make this transition seamless? So kind of like the herbs and spices, you're going to pull 3 cards for that one. You're going to want to look at those herbs, these steps here, as things that you're going to want to add in to get from one place to another. What's going to facilitate that transition for you? And then what will instantly shift? So once you add that thing, like how's it going to quickly change? What's going to happen right away? And then next, what will linger from before? So even in every sort of transition, transformation process, there are changes that happen that move you sort of onward, forward. And then there's things that sort of stick around from before, and also from taste wise. You're going to have that previous taste, like potentially like spices, like or not spices, like peppers, like chilies and things like that. They will have like a maybe initial sweet, and then it'll go to like hate, right? But then that heat will linger. So yeah, things like that, of that nature. So those are all the different readings. You're going to choose them as you see fit. I've put little tips on the side to help you determine, you know, give you a little bit of an idea of which one you might want to choose based on the taste that you have and need from the previous activity. But it's all up to you. You go with what makes sense for you. And of course, you can always alter the readings in a way that makes sense for you as well. It's all up to you. But yeah, those are the 2 activities. I'm so excited for you to do them. Definitely, yeah, let me know how it goes if you'd like, if you're interested in sharing. Yeah, I'd be really excited to know. But yeah, now we're gonna get into my experience. So if you're going to come back later, I'll see you later. And if you're gonna stick around, let us do that. Alrighty, campers. That's something that my friend says that now I say because I say it to their kids all the time. And so, yeah. Alrighty, campers. Let us begin on my experience. This was super, super fun. As I said, I loved it. But then it gets really deep as you go into the readings for the second activity. So that was really exciting to go from something kind of lighthearted to something a little bit deeper. I love that. I think it's perfect for the transforming flavors and for Taste Week. But yeah, so for the cards that I got, they were so fun and so interesting. I didn't really dig into them very much. I think it's something that I'll kind of do with time. Okay, so for the first one, this one was super funny. I got the sweetest card in the deck is work. You know, I guess work is the sweetest when, you know, you're kind of living your life, doing what you're meant to be doing. That's the way I personally think of it. I think of it as like, you know, when you're, I don't want to use this phrase. I hope like you'll get what I mean when I say this, but like a productive member of society. I hate it. But you know what I mean, right? Like when you're sort of contributing and you feel like purposeful, useful, like you're kind of doing, you know, what is in your capability to do, what you're passionate about, hopefully, and what is contributing to the well-being of other people as well. So kind of like supporting yourself and supporting others is a very sweet thing. Apparently the sweetest thing you could do. Not gonna lie, it kind of reminds me of what I used to learn in, you know, back when I was a Christian, when we talked about like how we were meant to work, and like God made Adam and Eve, and like their first task was to like work on the Garden of Eden and like and do that. So it was always like this idea of like work is a good thing. It's not something that's like bad. And, you know, it's kind of like what we're meant to do. We're meant to come, you know, work. But I feel like it's a very natural thing though. I think that's kind of what I got from it was like, you know, it is a natural thing to work. There's a lot of ways to look at this word work. I think there's a lot of shit aspects to it in the way that we experience it and enforce it. But yeah, something to think about there. I will definitely be thinking about that. And in that vein, the card that's not often seen as sweet, but it is the Emperor. Tell me that's not interesting. I'm suspicious. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, another thing to really explore that. I really, really enjoyed that. This was just a fun activity. So I'm not going to get super deep into the responses because we would be here all day because there's a lot of cards. But yeah, let me know what you think about these in the comments and what you got for them as well. I think it'd be really fun to compare answers. For Salty, I got the card that is has the power to balance strong energies and emotions. Kind of perfect. I got the 8 of Discs, Prudence. I think that's kind of perfect, especially with the keyword prudence. Like there's this like sense of balance and decision making and work as well. That's very like disciplined and yeah, very focused and doing what needs to be done, and you know, not perfecting it. It's almost giving Wu Wei in a sense, where you like perfect it in such a way that you don't work super hard, but you show up to the work on a, you know, all the time. I hope that makes sense. But yeah, super cool. And next we have the Epitome of Equilibrium. Now this one I found really, really interesting, and I'd be definitely interested to dig more into. I got the 2 of Wands, Dominion. This is the epitome of equilibrium? Okay, what do you think about that? I'm curious what you think about that, because I don't know what to think about that. yeah, I didn't really have a lot of time to like dig into all of these, so it's something that I'm gonna keep doing. God, there's gonna be a lot to process after thothtober. I know you know what I mean. And for sour, this is the card that corrects a sour attitude. Once again, this deck is playing with me. The Nine of Swords. Why did this card keep coming up for me personally? But anyway, and also in other decks I'm noticing. So something to think about. First it was the Ten of Swords like probably a couple months ago, like when I did the video on my favorite tarot decks. And now it's the Nine of Swords coming up in thothtober. But, you know, we won't get too deeply into that. I just find it interesting that this corrects a sour attitude. Does it though? Or does it produce a sour attitude? How could this correct a sour attitude? I think it's almost like when you think it's bad and then it gets worse and you're like, oh, okay. Yeah. Maybe I should be more grateful. I don't know. That's what comes to mind for me. And this card has a sour attitude. This one was super interesting. Oh my god, did I not pull it out? No, here it is. This card has a sour attitude. It's funny because you could look at it as like it has a sour attitude. Of course, it's the Tower. It's bad things happen. It's the card of bad news. It's the card of bad things. But I think it's also maybe the Tower has a sour attitude because it's misunderstood. I think people are always thinking about it as like they don't want to see it. They hate seeing it. It's like almost worse than death sometimes. They're like, well, go relax. You know, don't pigeonhole me. I don't like it. So yeah, I don't know. I think that the Tower may have a sour attitude because of that, because it's misunderstood. And it's like, put some respect on my name. Thank you. Or maybe it's just cynical and it's like, well, bad shit's always going to happen, so you just need to get over it. Not my fault. It's not my fault that it happens. I'm just here to tell you and show you and explain to you what's going on. So, you know, the Thoth is complex. I mean, the Thoth is complex. But yeah, the Tower is complex. But the most bitter card in the deck, now this was interesting. The Universe. It's almost like when you say bittersweet, but sometimes it's just bitter when you get to the end. And you gotta just like dissolve back into the cycle. You're just like, here we go again. Here we go again. I don't know, some endings are just bitter. They're not bittersweet. I don't know. Sometimes you're just defeated at the end. I know it's always looked at a good thing, but then you're looking at the universe, not just like the idea of what the universe kind of represents, which is like endings and beginnings and kind of like, you know, a completion of a cycle. But the universe is bitter. Going back to the labyrinth in Tarot in the Isness video, the universe sucks. The Thoth is here to tell it to us clearly. Well, tell me clearly. But this card is not often seen as toxic, but it can be. We've got the Princess of Swords here. It's funny, I've been recently looking at her. I really like her. I love her. But yeah, maybe she can be toxic. She is always kind of trying to destroy some shit. Maybe she needs to slow down. Maybe she needs to think about creating a little bit more. Granted, you know, she destroys for good reason. She's trying to do the right thing. This is giving Thanos. Maybe that's too strong of a comparison, but kind of look at her. She kind of takes pleasure in the rubble, and I don't really like that for her. She's kind of toxic. And then we have the card that has a depth I don't dig into enough. I almost would not believe you if you said this. It's the Princess of Wands. Are you kidding me? I love her. How could you ever say that I don't dig into her depth enough? That is all I do. Well, actually, that's not true. I love her. But there's the crows going by telling me, shh, dig deeper. Yeah, maybe sometimes I don't dig deep enough and I just kind of like what she represents, and she feels like kind of badass and powerful to me, but sometimes maybe there's just more there that I need to dig into. Maybe I need to dig into her fears a little bit more and understand them better instead of just focusing on like overcoming. Yeah, I just think, yeah, there's definitely more there for me. I always talk about how much I love her, but clearly there's more to learn. And yeah, this one, like I said, this deck is always trolling. Tarot is always trolling. This is the most satisfying, most delicious card in the deck. Can you guess? Going back to that, my favorite tarot decks video. Yeah, The Ten of Swords. Ruin. How's that? How is Ruin the most delicious, most satisfying card in the deck? Well, like I said, I tend to look at the Ten of Swords as the most liminal, one of the most liminal. Not in the Thoth per se, but most of the time, that's what I do. In a more Rider-Waite-Smith sense, I tend to look at the 10 as very liminal, very beautiful thing. You know, it is the card of transitions, as we're talking about this week. But apparently, with Ruin, I don't tend to see it that way. But now, I guess I will, and I do. But someone also did say on that video that they look at the Ten of Swords as ego death. And I think that's super interesting to think about as the most delicious and satisfying thing is to dissolve the ego and to, you know, it's giving almost the universe again, come back, come into a new, more enlightened state. I don't know, but it doesn't give that, but maybe it does. Ow. Anyway, yeah. So that's what I got for that. And then as far as the most, the epitome of taste and refinement, did I not pull it out, my dear? Here you are. I got the Two of Swords. Peace. Yeah, I could see that. It's very relaxed and unstressed and just enjoying life. At peace, at rest. And so therefore there's a discernment and a refinement of life that is naturally there because there's no hang-ups, no shit, just holding them down. Yeah, and so for the predominant taste in my life, when I came back to shuffle these cards, the predominant taste in my life is, drum roll please, is the Eight of Discs. Prudence. We got, this is salty. This was the card that has the power to balance strong energies and emotions. And then for the card that represents what a taste that I need at this time, drum roll, I got the Princess of Wands, which is my savory umami, digging into depth that I don't dig into enough. So super cool. I loved this. I have saltiness and I need umami. Super cool. So yeah, now let's get into the next activity to talk about which reading I chose. Okay, sorry for the angle change. I hope that wasn't too much of a jarring transition. But yeah, I just wanted to get my lights on because, you know, I figured fighting with the light is probably not the best idea to continue moving forward. I should probably just turn the light on. And in the meantime, I got some fresh tea. But anyway, so just to quickly go over, because I ended up choosing the fermenting and aging reading, and it's kind of a little bit more in depth and yeah, just a lot. So yeah, I went with the fermenting and aging for multifaceted development for my situation. And what was really interesting, I really, really loved this reading. I did a couple of other ones, but this is the one that I ended up expanding on. And I found it to be, wow, just really, really interesting. And there's so much more, as with everything, that I could continue to unpack and learn. But for the first card that I got, the base material to develop, I got the Fortune card. And this was really interesting because I've actually been looking at this card through multiple activities and being like, man, the wheel never comes, or I should say Fortune never comes up for me. Like, I wonder why that is. Like, when is it going to come up? Like, when am I going to explore this card? And I've been very interested to see when that is, and here we are. So for me, it was kind of just like what I ended up focusing on a lot was the Sphinx. Because there's different animals on the wheel, and for the Sphinx it talks about like knowledge, will, daring, and silence, and the quote incorruptible powers of discrimination and the ability to think clearly. And so just connecting that with like Fortune and what I tend to look at as kind of like the wheel as being like a mechanism of like a universal law type of thing. Like things are always in motion, they're always changing, and I tend to look at that as like the center of the wheel, like in the Lua Tarot, where it kind of talks about like when you're kind of in line with your will and purpose, that these kinds of shifts and changes, when you're at the center of the wheel, you won't be subject to like feeling like tossed kind of by the wheel. But And so that kind of gets into like the flexibility of the ape with like the magus, as well as like the crocodile and being creative and like making use of opportunities. But I kind of really looked at like I said, with the sphinx and the crocodile probably more so, or just like I said, amalgamation of all of them. But really looking at like wanting to develop my ability to create my own fortune and to be centered throughout. But it's like not the centering that is really my biggest thing. It's really the creativity and knowledge and daring and even silence. The silence I really stuck with because like that's something that I struggle with. I think like when I look at it as a skill or as a way of like, you know, I think about the magician and the magus and this idea of keeping silent, and it's something that I intentionally have been working on. So yeah, just using those things to create my own fortune, to be creative, to be flexible, to be able to take advantage of opportunities. Not advantage, I don't actually like that word. But yeah, just there's so much more there that I could get into. But for time of being able to explore it and for time of being able to explain it to you, we'll kind of leave it there. That's kind of the base material that I wanted to, well, that the deck is kind of giving me to develop here in a complex, multifaceted way. But with that being said, the next card was what tension is naturally added or can I introduce? And I got the Sun. And this was really interesting for me because it kind of went back to what I was talking about, the center of the wheel, and kind of being still and not expecting, like it said in the Tarot Mirror of the Soul, of like not expecting but living in the here and now, and that everything is good. And that's another aspect of like, I guess you could call it manifestation or creating and making use of opportunities and kind of like being in a way on my toes, but also at peace and at rest with everything kind of being all here, all now, and not needing, like not being hung up on desire or hung up on, you know what I mean? Like fortune. But at the same time, moving with it. I don't know. Does that make sense? Sorry, I thought I heard something. So yeah, I'm looking at this Sun card as like not wishing for the future, but being still and being like, it talks about living in a state of ecstasy as well, and radiating your light as opposed to like reflecting the light of others. So this is very much sense of like being in myself, being still here, being right in the here and now, and having the ecstasy of the now. And that's a tension with the Fortune card when we're talking about like how can you create fortune for yourself while also not being in want. How can you balance that? Like how can you do that? And so I feel like that's kind of the tension that is sort of fermenting here. And next we have, how can I savor the process of development? Well, I got a really cool card. I feel like it's just perfect. Makes so much sense. I got the Queen of Cups. And for me, it's just about like leaning into my sensitivity and my feelings. And it's something that's been coming up kind of like subtly throughout thothtober, is this experience of like being able to experience and express my emotions more. It's not something that one would say that I struggle with, or even that I would say I struggle with, but it's like this deeper layer of feeling that I'm looking to cultivate, or that I feel, or that seems to be, would be beneficial for me to just embrace on a deeper level. So as I'm experiencing this tension and developing this fortune idea in practice, whatever, I can just embrace the sensitivity that comes with that, and embrace the emotions that come with that, and express them and be authentic in that process, and just really move with it. And not, there's this sense of like not needing, the word pretentious comes to mind, but it's not about being pretentious, but she's just so like content in who she is and what's going on. And that's kind of, that's the way that I can savor it, is just being inside myself, like even like we talked about with the Sun as well. And what dynamic transformations can I expect to occur? Interestingly enough, with a card full of like a lot of majors as we go, and majors and core cards, this is the only numbered card. We have the Six of Wands. So are these coming out like, it's kind of bright. My lights maybe are a little too bright, but Oopsie. But yeah, the dynamic transformation that I can expect is victory. And so it's actually Jupiter in Leo, so that goes right back to the fortune card, and which is Jupiter expansion. So I can expect like big shifts in success and victory and things kind of going in the way that make me feel successful. So it's definitely about defining, even with the base material of the fortune card, about defining what that success, what that fortune, what that victory is for me. And as I go, I can expect that unification of energies, as it calls it, to happen between, you know, what I desire, what I desire, interestingly enough, like the goals that I have and them being reached. So yeah, just having opportunities work out, something to look forward to. That's really nice. Thanks. But yeah, the ultimate cycle, it's not forever. Like, this is not a long-term thing, but ultimately the cycle is around developing this idea of fortune within myself and the process of it. So I feel like, you know, the dynamic transformation that I can expect to occur is to experience said fortune, said process, but the dynamic shift is not one that remains in such a way, but it's a way of experiencing the larger cycle, if that makes sense. But we'll get around to it as we continue. What does that sound? I keep hearing something. And what subtle changes will I see? We have the Queen of Wands, which I found super interesting because she's about transformation. So to get her for subtle change, what I found interesting was in the Mirror of the Soul, it talks about like how her hair color changed and the spots on the animal hair changed. And I think about this idea that me and my QPP talk about a lot, which is like cellular level change. And like when these internal shifts and as you sort of expand and develop, your physical appearance changes because your cells shift. Like there's something about, like, you know, obviously when you like eat better, when you take care of your body in a more holistic way, but also when you take care of the mind, when you take care of all these various facets of your human existence, your cells will, you know, they change, they shift. And so yeah, we talk about like cellular level change and how it changes the way you look, the way your muscles on your face sit, and yeah, all of these things changes your posture. It changes all of these things about you physically as well, not just non-physically, not just intangibly, but tangibly you can see those changes. So I thought that was really interesting to see like subtle shifts in the way that I appear was something to think about. Is what I got from that card. And at what stage will it be most sour? I got the Hanged Man, my favorite guy right here. I love him. But yeah, for me, that's like, well, it's going to be really sour when you actually do have to make the big ass changes in life, in the way that you think and the way that you act. What did I say here? Yeah, having to let go of previous ideas and mindsets. Change means change. Yeah. And that is the hardest part. So becoming a new version of yourself, there's growing pains, but also changing your outer experiences and circumstances involves like work. It involves like the subversion of previous patterns. You have to shift them. You have to set them on a new path, and you have to take new actions. And those are things like you can't fully control because you've never been there before, and you have to let things unfold in ways that are unknown to you. So yeah, it's going to be really sour when you actually have to like engage and be in the middle of those changes and of that wheel turning. And yeah, I thought that was a really super cool card for that question. Kind of perfect as well, and relevant to me, to be real. And yeah, so at what stage will it be most intriguing? We have the Aeon. This card's been sitting in my spirit for a long time as well. I feel like there's something in it, especially when we go back to the sound and emanation card. I mean, week, I think that one really stuck out to me, and so I've been thinking about it ever since, about like crickets. And it's something to think about, especially as I've been like starting to read this book on a medicine wheel involving insects. So it's something that I've been thinking about, especially because this card really reminded me of crickets, and part of that book talks a lot about crickets, which I haven't gotten to yet, but it's something that's been on my mind. Anyway, that being said, it'll be most intriguing when actually the fruit of those changes, which we just talked about in the Hanged Man, come forward. So the new insights, the new perspectives, when I gain those discriminatory skills that we talked about in the fortune card, about like actually being able to create and discern and take advantage or take on those opportunities that come your way as you actually make those changes in patterns and mindsets, and you get to this new way of seeing or new way of being, and these subtle shifts happen, and whatever victories and opportunities work out for you work out, and these sort of this new stage, when you reach that new stage, when you're on the other side of that new stage, that's when it'll be really intriguing. There'll be a lot things that you're curious about and learning, and it'll be really cool. So I really liked that. And I also found that this is like double the fortune card. So yeah, I think that's another interesting aspect as well, like numerologically as too. So like 10 plus 10 is 20. Yeah. Which I guess also goes back to the priestess as well, if you like if you look at the 20 and you reduce it, but that's a story for another day. Yeah, and then lastly we have, when is it ready to nourish and satisfy? So this journey of developing the fortune, the process and idea and concept and experience of fortune and the fortune card, when is it ready to nourish and satisfy? When is it ready to be consumed and really live out in all of its glory? I guess that's the word that comes to mind. Is the Chariot. Which I don't get this card much either. I chose it for my memory, part of my memory map last week. I was about to say last month. It feels like it was a month ago. But yeah, we got this fortune card. Chariot. So that was really interesting, and I think it's something that I want to dig into even more. But what I found really cool about it was the thing at the center here, apparently, which is the Grail, apparently represents the Wheel of Fortune. So we've gone full circle, you guys. So perfect. So perfect. I swear the Thoth deck is so crazily good. But I don't usually use this word, but the idea is around like it's ready to nourish and satisfy when I've kind of mastered that Wheel of Fortune energy. Like I said, I don't like that word mastered, but for lack of a better term at this time, when also of the Sphinx. So here we have 4 Sphinxes, whereas in the Chariot, the Wheel. Why do I keep mixing the Chariot and the Wheel? Probably because it's the beginning and the end that we're talking about. But there's 4 Sphinxes here, whereas there's 1 on the Wheel. And so because I ended up focusing so much on that Sphinx, it was really cool to see. So now it's ready to nourish and satisfy when I feel like I have sort of the power and ability to sort of, I don't even like this word manipulate either. It's like this ease of not only moving with, but directing as well the power of the 4 Sphinxes. So we have like, what is it? The bull, the person, the eagle, and the lion. And so when I'm able to sort of direct those energies, not just 1, but 4 now, is when it's ready. And clearly this is a fermenting and aging process, so it's one that will take time. It's not one that's going to happen next week. But yeah, it's just really cool to see that the Wheel of Fortune is in this character's hands, in this figure's hands, and they have 4 sphinxes directing them. So when I'm able to really move with the wheel and have sort of the ultimate flow with it, and when I've understood it and lived it to the point of acting in the power of those 4 sphinxes, is what I wrote. When I am embodied in the energy of the bull, the lion, the person, and the eagle, and they work together to direct my power and creativity and decision making and opportunities and all that stuff. So I don't know how to wrap that up. Sorry, that was kind of intense, but I didn't mean to make a big noise. But yeah, I don't know how to wrap that up, but that was just... fermentation and aging is really, really intense. But yeah, I'm really excited for what this reading portends. I think it's something that felt so on point for me, as I think it goes back to one of the readings that I did. I don't know. I honestly can't remember, and if I don't have the paper with me, I'm not going to remember. But yeah, it just reminds me of a previous reading that I did, and just that connection there is really, really cool. So yeah, there's so many connections to be made, and I'm excited to really allow all of this to sort of settle with time, like in this fermenting and aging process, allowing it to just sort of sit and do what it's going to do and kind of set it and forget it for a little bit, all of Thothtober as a whole as well. But yeah, I'll leave it there. That's my experience so far. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I love you so much. Love you so dearly. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.